Welcome, everybody. Just letting everyone get in for a second, get settled. So it's good to have you all here today. Really excited to do something that's a little bit different, and hopefully super interesting, really valuable, and kind of give us an insight into a really specific kind of design and construction. So we're going to dive into a whole bunch of things today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jack, and I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Part3. I spend most of my time working on the product and working with architects and engineers all across North America. Quinton is one of my works for WRA, one of my absolute favorite companies, down in Dallas, leading the charge on educational design and construction. And Quinton's got a ton of really, really good stories and anecdotes and a really great experience that hopefully we're all going to learn a bit from today and get a little bit of an insight into what it's like to manage the nature of high volume, fast paced educational construction and design. It is September after all, and usually September for most of us means back to school. But back to school for me means running around with kids, picking up the last minute details and figuring out where I need to be on what day. Back to school for Quinton is very different. It's a massive push, it's a massive charge to make sure all those schools that we're sending our kids to are ready for those kids to come into. So thanks for joining, Quinton. Thanks so much for giving us a bit of your time and sharing some of your experience so far. Why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Sure, thanks, Jack. My name is Quinton Scales. I work at WRA Architect. I am the Construction Administration Manager. I have about 8 years in the industry, and I've been with WRA for about 2. We've been using Part3 for about a year and a half now. We did a big transition using that as our document software program. It's been going really good, and I think we have a really good foundation on that and been doing very well. So that's a little bit about me, and looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks, Quinton. I didn't even have to ask you to do that. That was nice. And so, what does it involve being manager of construction? You lead a team, right? What does the responsibilities of your team include?
Yes, so I have a team. We call it the CA team. They're a group of field representatives. They go out to the field. They do field reports, checking up, making sure construction is going according to plan, following the drawings, and making sure we're keeping on schedule. It's really kind of the extra set of eyes for that architect who can't be out in the field every day. They can report and make sure that everything's going according to plan, and just kind of help out whenever there needs to be anything looked at, or making sure that things are getting followed up on RFIs. There's really a wide range of things that they can do, but a lot of what they kind of focus on is being out in the field and helping out in the construction.
That's awesome. So I want to get into it a little bit. I'm excited to learn a bit more about what it takes in this world. But why don't we start from the beginning and kind of break into the world of education projects? So obviously, when we think of building with schools, we're thinking public money. We're thinking you've got school boards, you've got children that you're thinking about as part of the design and construction phase. So how does your firm approach planning and scheduling for kind of the nature of high volume education builds in school districts?
Yeah, so working with schools is definitely a lot different. We're not dealing with private money anymore; it's public money. You got to do a lot of prep work up front with that school district. That's having a lot of bond planning with them, figuring out what the needs are and how much how much capacity they have and can get. There's a lot of upfront work with that before the project can even go through. And again, since it's public money, I mean, all this has to go towards an election, and the local community has to agree to pass this bond. So we do a lot of work with every district to make sure that we can get them what they want and can get at the same time.
Yeah, Quinn and I were talking about this process a little bit before, and it's one that I find super interesting as well. Like I think it's quite unique. There's a lot of sectors that touch public money and government money, but when you're dealing with school districts, there's kind of a lot of added elements to it. And the idea that if there's any significant change along the way, whether it's in the design phase or the construction phase, you've already got an agreed bond. Like what's the process there? Because change in construction is a pretty much an inevitability, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, in the design phase, you kind of have an idea of what you can work with, and of course, the involvement with the owner, you can get them what they want. So it's pretty manageable to get what they're looking for at that point. Now, once you get to the construction phase, things get a little tricky at that point. I mean, there's already a set scope and budget. So and schedule too. So having to add any additional features or anything extra that the owner is wanting definitely impacts, all those variables, because it's just hard to get extra time and money when there's really not easily available for that.
Yeah. And speaking of timing, the timing component, we know what your deadlines are pretty much every year. And just before we came on, I was saying, Quinton seems so relaxed this week because everyone's back at school, right? So you're spending most of your time with really, really strict end dates, getting everything ready for that new school year. Every September, it's probably pretty consistent ramp up for your calendar and your cycle. So what do you think are the biggest challenges, for your project team managing those deadlines? How do you navigate them? What tips and tricks have you learned over the years?
Yeah, it's summertime is definitely the busiest time for construction, especially with school districts. I mean, it's both sides of the equation. You got school districts that are starting up because school just ended, so we're trying to ramp up and get it going. And also, school districts are trying to finish so that they can be finished and ready for the school time. There's a lot of CA, especially when it comes to submittals and RFIs with that, making sure we get good quality lead times. And a lot of that really can be managed when it comes to the submittal and RFI process. I mean, Part3 does a great job with that, making sure that there is, an easy and simple way to approach that. Really the biggest thing, if we can just keep all that document management away from email and keep email kind of designated to those, sensitive and hot topics, and keep the normal construction process in a program, that really helps a lot. Um, and I think that would probably be the biggest thing that helps the schedule, because when you can return those submittals and RFIs, that allows the contractor to get those long lead items ordered and then on the job site installed, so that we can hit those hard schedule deadlines. Because by the end of the it's time for that project complete, especially if it's a renovation, kids are in a different portable sometimes, and they got to get back, and they only have those portables for so long. So I mean, hitting those deadlines are very critical, especially you get those kids back in the school.
So staying organized, staying proactive, keeping on top of your documentation. Those are the tips. What happens if there is a change? Like, what do you do? So we were just talking, like the last couple of weeks of September ramp up, you're in full, hustle mode to get things over the line. What happens if changes or, unforeseen problems come up right at the end there?
Yeah, and really, it's not like this doesn't ever happen. It happens all the time. It really just kind of depends on what the situation is, and there just has to be a decision of, okay, is this critical or is this not critical? Is this something we can do now, or can we do this later? And most of the time, if it's a determining factor of finishing the schedule, getting kids in and substantial, it may get pushed, and for ultimate reasons, that's what a lot of times it will happen to. But if it's something that can be managed and easily done, it's more or less kind of just crammed into the schedule, and just kind of puts a lot of pressure on the contractor and subs. But if it's within reason, it can be done. It's just another level of stress added.
Do you have any good stories on this? Any particularly challenging projects that you've managed or your team's managed?
I mean, I've been saying, if the job site, if the construction's going perfect, that's not normal. So there's never really been a job site where it's been perfect and always gone. But I will say, probably, I mean, there's always something unique on each one, but definitely some recent ones. I mean, the big things are renovation projects, especially trying to utilize part of it and then renovate one side. That one's definitely pretty hard. What seems to happen a lot is, these are older schools and they need to be renovated, and the as-built from decades ago just aren't accurate and updated to what they actually should have been, and that's reflecting in the new drawings and causing I mean, just a change order nightmare, and RFI, just hundreds of RFIs along with that. So that's definitely something that can really impact just every party at that point. But I mean, I've seen it all. I mean, it can be on the in the subcontractor side, they sub a sub out to another sub, and just trying to get that performance and done within schedule, that can really put a detriment to you. I mean, I've even nowadays, I've seen the owner want to mail a check for the pay app, and to me, that's kind of third world, So it's really the thing is, you can't control everything at all times, but the things that we can control, that's what I definitely say that we need to manage the best.
I can't even imagine the frustration that would go through your mind. We're in a hurry, we're hustling, and you want to mail a check.
Yeah.
That's speed, right? Speed and efficiency. So what do you do in those situations though when you've got a contractor that's quite stressed? You can see that things are starting to spin out a little bit. We're struggling for deadline. You know this is an important enough feature or component where it's going to stop kids coming, or you're going to have to like figure out a way to delay substantial. So what goes through your mind there? Are you kind of like taking on the management perspective of mediating the team and bringing people together, figure out what's possible, or are you trying to immediately find ways to like bring in temporary facilities for the schools and keep construction moving?
Yeah, we try to control what we can control at that point. It's sometimes a lot of it can be out of our hands, just given our situation. But really, if there is something that we can help out and get things expedited, that's where we can probably help the team out the most. If there needs to be some coordination meetings with the engineers and subs, that always helps. Meeting out on the job site, seeing what's going on, just getting eyes on and hands on. Okay, what's happening, what's the situation, get a visual of the schedule. What does the impact show on the cost side as well. I mean, the many different variables that can come to that, but it's some things are a lot of out of our control, but if we can really be efficient in the things we can control, that's probably the best that we can handle in a lot of the situations.
Yeah, control is an important component as well. Control is something that comes up a lot in the CA side of things. And it can mean a lot of different things too, right? There's control over your teams, there's control over your sub consultants, control over the schedule, control over the data and everything else that you're putting into the process. What are the main strategies for keeping control of the pieces that are within you? So like your sub consultants, that's your main world. You need to make sure you're kicking back the RFIs, submittals, you're publishing changes as quickly as you can, you're working with the consultant, the owner, to give them the answers they need. So what's the most important sort of aspect of staying in control?
Yeah, the main thing that kind of sticks out to me is communication, really. Just kind of having that open dialect, talking to people, and you need to see what's going on. It's really just when there's a lack of communication flow, that it kind of constricts how smoothly the job site can go. I mean, whenever we're out in the field and just trying to figure out, hey, how are things going? Just with normal construction operations, just having that conversation of, hey, how's it going? Everything going all right? I checked out this one area, it looked pretty good. This one area, hey, there seems to be a little, maybe touch up in that spot there. And just a simple conversation can really help a lot. And especially when it comes to documents too. I mean, if there's not a simple way to have those documents just sent out and easily sent to the right person efficiently and quickly, so that you can get the answer back, that can also put a hinder to what you can and can control. So and that's another thing too. Again, I'm always going to say stay away from email when it comes to just normal document management, because those emails need to stay for more critical things, and so that you're not really bogged down. But yeah, it's communication really just all around. We don't want to have I mean, one thing I know we do with our team, we always talk to everybody. You know, we're not just, you know, one-sided. We're there for the whole project to make sure that, you know, we're helping the owner, the GC, the engineer, subs, everybody, and make sure that we're getting the project completed. So we're always there with an open mind to make sure to say, hey, we're here to help, and you know, we're not afraid to speak up just to make sure that things are getting done correctly.
That's a good one too. Collaborate and avoid email when you can, not all the time.
Yeah.
If you and I imagine this has evolved quite a lot, right? You've been building schools a while, you've been in construction and in architecture for a while. So as you reflect back, you know, over the span of your career so far, and you kind of think back to how things have evolved, both in process, the ways teams are working, the ownership of certain tasks, the technology and the tools that you've all started using. If you reflect back since the start of your career, like what are the sort of biggest changes that you've seen, and how has that evolved and maybe impacted your projects?
Yeah, I mean, technology has just been, I mean, exploding recently, of course. I mean, it always seems like the construction industry is always a little step behind when it comes to that technology. But we really kind of ramped up where we're kind of heading there now. I mean, even when I was first learning about construction, I mean, everything was still done on print, and you know, everyone have their own set of copies, and the thing is, you know, knowing I know now, it's kind of like, okay, well, which version do you currently have? You know, well, how outdated is that? And did you already get the work done that should not have been done, and now we got to go do rework, which is of course a cardinal sin in the construction industry. So I mean, everything really, we just kind of gone from, you know, paper to now iPads. I mean, iPads, you know, iPads, it's just technology, having Wi-Fi. I mean, just our phones now. I mean, you can connect to anything now. And being out there on the job site, because now you got all the latest information. Everything's typically in a centralized location, and you can find it. Everything's being cross-referenced, so you know, if you need to find why that revision was done, you know, it can be related back to what the question was. So that seems to be kind of the big thing I'm seeing in the industry, especially not just with, and that's along the communication lines, but also a lot with lasers and drones. You know, now you can go scan a building and get aerial images, and that also helps the architecture. So, I mean, that technology is only improving and getting better by the day, and it's quite fascinating, you know, getting all that information and how much time it saves you, and you know, to put the work where you need to put the work, and have technology take care of, you know, kind of the small tasks that need to be done, but you don't need to focus on all the time, which is
Have you,
just
have,
sitting it back and forth sometimes.
yeah, have you seen like how many construction sites have you got where you're using drones, lasers, and that type of thing right now, or like you know this year?
Oh, good. I mean, if it's a renovation, I mean, we're drone and lasering it. It's we always like to get a topical site with drones, and if it's a renovation, we do the lasers, because, like, you know, the story I mentioned earlier, if the as-built are not accurate, that's where we run into those issues. But that laser, we can get a 3D image of the whole building, and then give us actuals of what the building layout is, and kind of work off of there. So of course, in new build, you don't need to worry about that stuff. I mean, you can get some oversight stuff, but I mean, when it comes to renovations, those are definitely hot projects, because there's always an extra demand and need on that. So having that extra technology can help mitigate a lot of the extra heartaches, and it's more like it makes them disappear, which is something, you know, it's hard to calculate that data, but just knowing how bad it could have been and what I've seen before, we're just so far ahead that it's pretty good now.
Yeah. How do you think this has helped you manage clients? So you have a really specific type of client, right? It's predominantly schoolwork, school boards, and public money, which can vary a lot. We've met school boards that have in-house construction management expertise. We've met school boards that are smaller, thinner budget, outsource all of it, and really heavily rely on architects to manage that component. So how do you kind of a sort of justify the cost to the project for that type of technology, and how do you kind of show them that they're getting the value out of it? You know, things like lasers and drones for someone who's not quite close to the construction site or doesn't do construction day in day out, they might need some convincing, right, to sort of see the benefit of that.
Yeah, really having the kind of the history of where what we have been doing and kind of where we're heading. We have a lot of kind of precedent projects we can kind of reference back to, and we kind of understand where the square footage is at right now. Okay, you need kind of this size of a building, or you need an addition of that much. We kind of have all that data and kind of collect it over time, and then use that to our advantage to kind of give the client a heads up, like, hey, this is kind of what it seems like you're needing and looking for. This is kind of where the ballpark number would look for that. And then, I mean, that all rolls into the having to go into bond planning and figuring out, is it achievable, is it workable, and all that good stuff. So having a lot of past history has definitely helped get us to make those relationships, and get the client what they need pretty accurate.
That's a really good one. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because it didn't let you prepare for this. But would you have any advice for architects that are maybe not quite as forward thinking as WRA? Because I think you are slightly ahead of the times. But would you have any advice for firms that are trying to adopt that new technology, whether it's lasers and drones, whether it's Part3, whether it's anything else that is going to be client facing and ultimately beneficial to the project? If you're trying to bring in something for the first time and introduce it, how do you kind of like speak to the client, let them know that this is truly valuable and worth it?
Yeah, just kind of initially thinking it's something that the big companies and already. You definitely don't want to get behind the curve on that. But to kind of get to that point, you kind of have to have the vision of kind of understanding and comprehending how this is actually benefiting the company and the client at the same time. It's just a lot of useful data, information, and I mean the work that technology can do now can save so many man hours. So if you can have that understanding from just an operations level, I think that will probably lead you towards the right direction.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think what you've done a great job of historically is build long-term relationships with these school boards, right? So they've kind of seen over time how much more effective and how much more efficient you've become using them.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's I mean, most of our clients are all repeat clients, and I mean that's kind of what we do with WRA. Our motto is who we're continuing to work with them because we are good to work with, and we want to continue working with them. So we are glad that they want to continue working with us too.
And as you kind of like look forward a little bit and you sort of see some of the emerging trends or some of the tools that are coming out, is there anything that's particularly excited you or anything that you think is going to help your firm overcome any of these other challenges around client management, tight schedules, high volume, anything else like that?
Yeah, the biggest thing that's emerging, and I'm pretty sure everyone's already heard it or in some form or fashion, but AI is here and it is around to stay. It is really something that is, I'm not going to say it's going to take your job, but what it's really going to do is it's going to do all that work and time and data information that would take hours, hundreds, thousands of hours for someone, normally to do, and do it in a couple of minutes. I mean, the thing with all that information you get with AI, it's just something that you can then reference and then make the decision you need to do without having to put that much work into it. I mean, even right now, I wish I had AI to the level in construction to where I can put all the RFIs we have ever done for the company and have it sort through, okay, these are all similar and these kind of reference and these cost a certain amount of money, so that we could fix those problems and make sure we don't do it again, and correct our drawings and prepare us for the future. And then have the vice versa of it, kind of see the problems that, were problems, but didn't have any costs associated with it, just so that we can kind of get that efficiency up. But AI, I mean, it's pretty interesting what it can do. It's going to take a little while though to really get to where it can, really help us and make a big impact right away. But we're heading up that curve, and I'm already seeing how it can be used and just utilize that. So it's a great tool when you need it the most, and when you just really don't have the time to do all that strenuous work yourself. And that's where I really see it excelling.
Yeah, that's a good one. AI is one of those topics where as soon as someone mentions it around me, it's a little bit of a trigger, and I tend to not shut up about it. But I won't go too deep. I won't bore anyone. But it's super exciting to see folks like yourself kind of like leading the way of actually trying to use it. Because you are right, AI's got a long way to go before it really is impacting sites and impacting schedules and helping us manage workforce and doing all the things that it should do. I think what you've given there is a really great use case, though, that is figuring out how and what patterns exist within what is already a massive database that you have. You have a huge number of RFIs, probably more than a few on each project. And if once you take that at scale, every firm is going to have a really unique pattern and how you respond and how you get back to those. So AI is a future facing emerging trend, but it's also here, it's also ready. And you're already kind of leading and the thoughts of where you think it should apply and how you could use it today. Have you seen it kind of creep into any of your projects yet? Have you seen any early signs of how AI might sneak into the day to day sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I mean, what it's kind of being utilized right now. With document management, it can scan a lot of different forms and kind of pinpoint those spots you need to see and kind of highlight them. So it's definitely got a good start on it. Of course still's got a while to go, but it can do things like create a submittal log, which, if you have to do it by hand, can take a couple of hours. But, if you just have AI that can already create that submittal log right away, takes a couple of minutes. So, I mean, the things it can do right now is already saving time. And the thing is, in the future, it's only going to be helping a whole lot more.
That's one example you sort of touched on earlier as well, right? Trying to get ahead and be very proactive in things like submittal schedules and understanding what's coming. But that's a great use of a tool that exists today and can be rolled out and used. So, what does your schedule look like today, Quinton? You're done. You're back to school. The kids are in. Are you kicking back and chilling, or are you already preparing for the next season?
Well, it feels a whole lot better now that summer is over. So I am kind of relaxing a little bit, kind of tapering off. So that feels good. Uh, but really now, what I think and focus on now is, okay, what about next year, the next wave that's going to be coming. So I do a lot of forecasting to make sure that, we get the projects taken care of ahead of time, and the workloads around that is all taken care of. So it's always interesting. I always see myself thinking a year in the future, and I'm freaking out. And then I come back to the present. I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. Actually, it's gonna be okay.
Well, because you can see yourself, right? You've got PTSD from being out in the hot Dallas sun at those schools, making sure everything moves on plan and on schedule, so you know what it's going to look like in a year to be back in that bit again.
Exactly. Yep.
When you're looking at those early designs and you're planning for the next sort of rush of construction, like are there any sort of common, you know, gotchas and watch outs that you tend to look for in the design phase or in the CD phase?
Yeah, it really comes down to kind of the size of the project and what we're looking and working with. The location can matter too, because that can do a lot with, okay, what's the commute out to there, back and forth. Uh, a lot of that comes into play, and kind of what are the surrounding projects for this person. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Whenever I have my team and they're going out to all the projects, I'm always thinking about, okay, what's the size of the project, what's the schedule, what's the scope, the scope and value, and how can I maximize how many projects they can go to, within a congregated area, and keep that efficiency up.
so many different things to juggle. And so WRA Architects are a fantastic firm. How does your firm kind of push the boundaries a little bit on what normal, say normal, but what normal school design and construction might look like?
Yeah, so one thing I really like about WRA is they really make the design for the school very personal. There's a lot of research that goes into the community, the town, the district, and who they are, and kind of mold the design into what's catered to them. So you'll see a lot of input coming from the owner, a lot of research, just figuring out, okay, who are we dealing with? What are we dealing with? And kind of getting those big ideas of what also the board and the community is looking for into that school. We don't really do a lot of copy and paste projects, and most of them they are practically a specific and unique project for that client. So it really kind of gives a very very special sense of uniqueness for each of them. And especially when I'm going through each of the projects and seeing what they look like, I get stunned a little bit too, because I mean, in my mind, of course, construction related, everything is built with the same material, but what we can do and use materials in a different way to give a different feel for the building is really what makes, I think, us stand out, because we can give you that $100 million school, but it was only 50 million in material and labor and all that stuff, because of how the design is incorporated and used. It can really give a good really just a good relationship with the client, but also just giving them that personal feeling of, yes, this is yours and it's designed specifically for you.
There you have it. All the tips and tricks from Quinton, as a veteran of educational design and construction. And I think a bunch of good tips in there. We're going to make sure we communicate effectively, managing these clients and managing really complex schedules and high paced construction, avoiding email as much as we can, being proactive as much as we can, trying to keep control over what we can and make sure we've got the equipment to take out to site, whether it's on the cloud, and stay connected when we can, and making sure we've always got a real time set of drawings handy so we can have those conversations. That's fantastic. I know that Part3 have loved partnering with you and WRA the last year and a half. We're super excited to see more of the innovations reach construction sites in Dallas and some of these schools as well. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. And if you want to reach out and learn a little bit more, we can share Quinton's contacts. I'm sure he'd be happy to share loads more tips on what you can do in education construction, and reach out to us at Part3. We're happy to show you how to take control of those construction sites and put a bit more efficiency into your pocket as well. Thanks, everyone. It was great speaking to you all today. Thanks, Quinton.
Yeah, thank you as well. Thanks.